Hey everybody, what's up? Today we are looking at how to improve your Fortnite gameplay with these simple tips and tricks. It's a long video, so buckle up, and I apologize about that, but if you would like to check out some funny videos, go look me up on TikTok. It's BLUSQUAD812. If you want to follow my live streams, hit that button, go to Twitch, check me out there. Alright, let's get to it.
I've only been playing since Chapter 2, Season 1, so I'm not that great. But just to try to give myself some of that quote-unquote social proof validity, here's my Fortnite tracker stacks compared to, like Nick 830, Ninja, say what you want about these guys, but it is what it is. But, and we also know how accurate Fortnite Tracker is, right? Because everybody leaves it up 24/7. What we're looking at right here is Akures. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but he was on Reddit. He was so grateful and amazing. He made this last season, so this is Chapter 2, Season 2. But I feel like this still holds true for today's games. I really don't think they would have changed zones up that much. But yeah, it is what it is. So basically where these hot zones are on each of the zones is where that zone tends to go. So for like zone 4, if you place that fully scaled over the map, the east northern side of the map is where zone 1 normally tends to be. And the less darker spots is where it usually would be. So you can memorize these, but after a while of playing, you just kind of get used to like, hey, this is zone 4. Usually it's going to be in this general area or this area. Usually zone 1 is really more dependent on where more landmass is, but that's not 100% confirmed. But it's a good rule to go by. And as you can actually see, is as the zones go, say, to the east more, after about 2 or 3, they will usually backtrack the opposite way, and then once there, so for zone 4, they either, obviously they can stay where they're at, but more likely they're going to jet off in 1 or 2 directions. And then from there, basically you have about 4 core hotspots for zone 5. And then obviously zone 6, zone 7, and 8, it's a little bit more dependent. But those hotspots are where those final zones actually are. Actually, this was a zone, so this is a zone in progress, because this was out of 579 games, and I think the rest of those on the map were like out of 800 games. So this is lower, but this is for that zone. And it shows that mostly on the east of the map is where that zone is. So like all these overlays are where that would be. There's a whole Reddit breakdown of how he describes how this actually works, because you see how it doesn't actually cover the whole map, so it's not like this whole east coast right here. It's more this inner. I think it's more based on the center, but it's kind of confusing, I won't lie. But it's a good general idea to like be familiar with this, because what you can do is you can use this to help you learn to predict where zones are. And honestly, there's so many times where that has saved my team, because that can depend on if you want to rotate somewhere, how quickly, how soon, all of those things. Like the rotations, that part, it comes back into game sense, so that's a big part of it. But off of that, if you're paying attention to your rotations, you can basically use this to get easy top 10s without ever fighting. You can basically rotate either back edge, and if you're rotating on back edge, or even if you're rotating in front of it, you can actually look and see where the major POIs are. And based off of that, you can kind of estimate that, correlating with the amount of people that are left in the match, where the hotspot teams are going to be, and you can rotate around that if you want to get high placement and low fight engagement games. Now on the flip side, if you're trying to get those high kill games, you can actually use that to your advantage. Now obviously if you're playing random squads, there's a lot of communication things that come into factor with that, like A is just having a mic. I'm telling you right now, if you or your friends that are playing don't have a mic, get a mic. Get like you can get a $5 pair of headphones, that earbuds. That's what I used on my Xbox for years. I want to say like 3 or 4 years. And that's how I learned to play Fortnite. Like the first 6 months I played Fortnite, that was on Xbox One. And that's all I used was that mic headset. And it's a pair of earbuds. If you take care of them, they'll work. It'll be fine. It's not going to be the greatest. May not want to stream with them. But you know what? It's communication. You can at least communicate. Now, can you communicate without a mic? Yes. But it's a lot of marking, a lot of tagging, a lot of the team comms that are built in. So, you've got to be good with that. It's not impossible, but it's very hard. On to the next thing. Now, I am not the type of person to say that if you pick a late drop that you are 100% going to come out a loser in that situation. No, no, no. But what I will say is you have a very slim percentage of coming out of a hot drop if you drop late. And especially if your team doesn't drop together. Now solos, that's a different beast entirely, so we're going to kind of ignore solos right now because we're focusing on team building exercises, which in the long run make you a better solo player, minus the myths that people talk about, and I'll talk about that at the end of the video. But so in duos and squads, I see everybody want to drop salty. If I play random squads, usually at least 2 or 3 games out of 6, people will drop there. So almost 50% of the games I play, people want to drop salty, which for me, I have no nostalgia. I haven't played the game that long. I could care less about salty. It honestly has very low loot, minus the fence and some of the trees and the houses. Obviously, if you map the houses, everybody's coming out with a lot of mats. But besides that, you're coming out with low shields, low health. Almost all the time, somebody's already popped the Slurpee truck outside. Sometimes they even land there and rotate into salty. So, I play most of the time to have fun. I play for the memes, obviously. TikTok and YouTube. I'm not playing for anything serious. But at the same time, you want to secure a higher chance of being able to do what you want to in that game versus just immediately dying off spawn, because that's no fun. You basically just queuing up a bunch of times. Actually communicate with your team if possible, because if you're dropping salty and you're the only one going there, you're pretty much already putting down the team as a 3 and 4. And I understand you don't always have to go with your team, but essentially when you're playing squad games or duo games, you're playing there to play with another person, to not go solo. Because if you're gonna go do solo stuff, just go play solos. They have a game mode for you. And I know I'm speaking a little bit out of annoyance, but I mean, a lot of people feel that way. I'm sure if you don't, give this video a thumbs down. But for me personally, if you're gonna play squads, play as a team. If not, just go play solos. But yeah, so picking drops, no matter game mode, solos, LTMs, that's still really important. So one of the biggest myths I've seen in the Battle Royale community, just overall general, is you have to play solos to improve your game performance. Now, I see what they're coming from, because if you're getting carried every game, then yeah, that's an issue. But playing squads or duos really help you build up confidence once you have a solid team to play with. Now, so for the most part, I strongly disagree. Now, there's certain mechanics that you can learn in solos that will definitely carry over into other games and help you better perform, but vice versa is also true. If you look at military teams, they train together. Do they have solo training? Yeah, that's for their specializations. But overall, they have to function as a team. I know not every Battle Royale has duo, squads, trio game modes for comps and all of that, so that's different. But for the most part, if you train as a team, you'll get better, you'll learn your weaknesses, people can help point them out, like, hey, you're really good at this, but I notice every time we run into this situation, you're bad, this is what happens, or like, this is how you react, you need to work on that. Now, obviously, if you're getting carried every game, like if every game all your other teammates are coming out with 3 to 7 kills and you're coming out with 1,
that's an issue. Now, Fortnite itself has a very poor assist tracker. It's at the end. Sometimes it's not accurate, yada, yada, yada. So, that could be improved upon, because then you could actually find, okay, are you the person that's cracking everybody and then letting your team follow up with kills? Because if you're the one that's spotting everybody, so basically you're a spotter for the team, and you spot all the enemies, and you get the good hit on them, and you're like, hey, this person here's cracked at, say South 210 or something, and then you move on to the next teammate while your teammates focus on them, then that can help the team, because you're cracking people and then they're just cleaning up. So you're not going to get the LMs, but you're helping the team out in a great way. And if you're queuing up with randoms in either duos or squads, trios, essentially if you want the team to do good, you have to be the leader. You're taking responsible for that team. So what that means is you're negotiating where the drops are, when to drop. You're monitoring where other teams are. So you're spotting like where the other teams are. You're telling your team, hey guys, Misty's a hot drop. We gotta land the same house. There's like 7 other teams here. And timing how you're gonna rotate, because how your team rotates can either make your team or break your team. So for example, if you land, say, we'll go with the Misty example. You land Misty, it's hot drop. A bunch of guys drop in the back corner. You guys get your mats, a little bit of mats in there. You get your loot. You can easily rotate out to the back side. There's a heli there. There's numerous boats. You can easily rotate out and go to another POI, or you can even hit some of the other like out in the middle of nowhere chests and stuff, and you can still come away with great loot. And you can even rotate back to Misty for cleanup after everybody else is done fighting, and you can come in with full health and shields while everybody else is healing up. It's just a smart play. You just got to be aware of it. Now, the best thing to do though is to play with a goal. So you pick one of these objectives that are in the video, and you just go at it. Like that's what you focus on. So whether it's rotations, game sense, tracking people, predicting where circle's going to go, all those things play a big factor. But if you do them over time and you combine them all together, it really adds up to an impressive kit in your arsenal of gameplay. And it may not help you get up with pros. It may not help you even in comps. I can't crack the top 10,000. I always come in at like top 10,500 every single time. But it'll definitely get you to a better place than you probably are right now. And if you're already better than this, then that's fine. Actually, if you probably do play better than me, or like better than these tips, drop your own tips below, and we'll make a part 2. We'll make a part 3. So in this part, basically what I'm going to talk about is how you need to analyze everything. So I told you guys, you got to play with the goals. That's focusing on the rotations, focusing on keeping an eye out where enemies are, just predicting where people are going to rotate to, all those things. The other thing that you really have to keep an eye out for is just analyzing your own gameplay. It's called the VODs, going into the game reviews. Now, this is where a little bit of what I'm going to talk about tends to go to the consoles, because depending on which platform you play on, that will limit how many VODs you can review, or if you can review them at all. I'll go into that more whenever I talk about what device you play on the platform, but just keep that in mind as we're talking about this section. So, a lot of people say anytime you die, you should look at your VODs. I say anytime you play, and your goal for that day or that week is I'm going to improve, look at your VODs. Play 2 or 3 games and then go back and look at them, whether you won, lost, whatever. Look at why. So like if your team won, look at what you did. Did you panic? Were you calm in a high stress situation? I see in game a lot where people mess up, and I'm definitely one where I've messed up in game. One time I walked off my own builds, which should have been an easy win. But on the flip side of that, I've won games where I was like 20 health and both people were trying to pickaxe me. It just happens. Now, if you are calm in those situations, or you learn to get calm, you have a huge advantage because most people are not. They're nervous, they're shaking, even pros, like, and you'll see it in their streams, you know, they talk about it, like, they get into that zone, they focus, and then after that moment's over, then they get that sigh of relief, whether they die or not. You know, they're usually mad if they die, you know, which I am too. But after that, you get that sigh of relief, and then you can, like, calm down and you actually think more. But the more that you get used to thinking in that higher state of focus, the better it is for everybody. Yeah, so then, you know, figure out what items and loot that you really like using, because a legendary gold isn't any better than a gray if your aim is worse. And I've proven that time and time again. I've done gray gun challenges so many times that it's funny. I'm a beast with the pistol. You know, I just call it John Wick in it. And because I can come back off the reboot van with the gray pistol, I can take out 3 or 4 people from an opposing squad. Flat out. Even if they got SMGs, whatever. It's just how it is, you know. So just get good. I know it sounds bad, but, you know, just get good. Practice with what you like. Practice aiming. Analyze when you miss a shot. Why did you miss it? All those things. And I know that's like a small thing to analyze, but all the small things kind of tend to add up. And analyze, you know, your drops. You know, I said before the drops are very important, but really, like, if you drop somewhere, are you always dropping late, having to run into the town? That's my problem. Depending, I know, like, at retail, and I want to say retail and salty, because I never really drop salty, and retail I drop a lot, but I rotate to the outside chest. So, you know, if I try to rotate in, like, in town retail off of drop, it usually is bad because I'm not used to that drop. So just, like, working on your drops, figuring out, okay, am I landing on this chest, or am I landing next to the chest and I'm breaking 2 extra walls to get to that chest? Or is it quicker in this house to get the floor loot and then run up and then take the person out that got the chest? Because a lot of times, in a lot of houses, the floor loot is quicker than the chest, and by the time somebody gets to a chest, you can usually take them out with the floor loot. But it just depends per house, per area setup, and how many people drop with them. Now, everybody talks about, like, side grades, mythics being the meta in this game, which, you know, damage, parkour, they're right. You know, damage-wise, that's probably 100% true. However, the proven meta in this game is fight control. How do you have fight control? By building. That is why people box up. That is why people build ramps, the pyramids for peeking, you know, the peanut butters, all of that, because it helps you control the rate that you're fighting. And if you can box up really well, and you can heal before you have to go back to the fight, you've got a bigger chance of winning. And then that also goes to the high ground. You know, the 48 laws of power is basically, you don't ever give up the high ground. You know, and I know it's a Star Wars reference too, but I like to use 48 laws of power. It has a lot of great examples. But if you do all of these things, it will really help with your overall gameplay. Now, third parties are always going to happen, where that's where building really comes into play. So if you knock somebody, you build around them and yourself to get that limb, or the shakedown, whatever it is. If you're healing, you build around yourself, maybe 1-2 layers deep, so you can get the kill off and be fine. But yeah, overall, just constantly analyze your games and see really what's really going on. Because you may think you're doing something, but then you go watch the vid and you're like, oh, yeah, I missed that shot really bad. Like, I thought that was a lot closer. Or it's like, man, I was so low. How did I live that? And then you can sometimes go to your opposition's perspective and you can see what was going on. Because maybe they were a lot lower in health than you thought because they came out of a third party or whatever. But that's what it is, you know. So just analyzing everything, whether it's, you know, what loot you grab, how well your aim is, all those things really come into play for your overall gameplay. Because then you start analyzing your rotates, your reboots, your choices to, use comms, not comms, and even in solos, all these things really help add up to an overall higher placement percentage chance. Now, it's not a guarantee, but it's a chance. If you do these things and you start executing on them, you have a higher percentage of making it to the top.
So, yeah, this one is a little bit interesting because for me personally, I still play on controller, but I played on a regular Xbox 360 controller. I was playing on default build settings, and the very first thing that helped me was A, turning on Builder Pro, and then B, turning on the release on edit, and then just kind of changing with the multiplier for the sensitivity and building and not building and all of that, and finding something that I liked. Eventually, this is a fair warning, eventually after these minor changes, eventually, could be months, could be a week or two, depending on how good you already are, that you'll plateau. And essentially what that means is you'll hit your improvement peak, and then the only way to get better is to actually look up optimized keybinds, different controller inputs, etc., those kind of things, or using hotkeys. But it may or may not happen quickly, so just analyze your gameplay. Again, back to analyzing. Analyze your gameplay and figure out what's really good. Now, there's a couple of aim sensitivity maps. I'll actually link the one in the description that I use, and essentially it puts you at different distances, and you can actually track your aiming on it, and then you can adjust your sensitivity. Now, your sensitivity, I can 100% tell you, will vary depending on your input device, like actually what you're using controller wise, and it'll vary what console you're playing on. Now, I know it sounds kind of weird, but my sensitivity, if I play, because I play with a Fusion A Pro controller, so it has paddles on the bottom. If I play on Xbox with that controller, I have to turn my sensitivity way up on Xbox because it's not the same. My sensitivity is way lower. Now, on the reverse side of that, say if I'm at a friend's and I play on the Xbox and I don't have my controller, I have to turn my sensitivity way down. And the reason is joysticks, they have less grip on Xbox Ones compared to my Xbox One Fusion Pro controller. They have more grip, they're rougher, they're harder to push, and that's just how it is. And then if you're on keyboard and mouse, there's a lot of things that can mess with your sensitivity, from your DPI settings to your mouse pad to your display area, to if you do really fast movements, or if you're a big stroke person, with the arm movements, of course. That's what we're talking about, because at that point, there's a lot of things. And then once you do hit that plateau, then you have to look at how you're holding your keyboard, how you're holding your controller. Do you want to switch to claw? There's all these different types of techniques. Do you want to change your keyboard layout? How many hotkeys do you want to go into? All of that types of different things. My recommendation for those that play controller solely, this mostly goes for Xbox and PlayStation controllers. I'll talk about Switch in a little bit, and my next section is just going to be straight on which consoles and which put you at a disadvantage, all of that. Now, Xbox, PlayStation, and computer, because both of these controllers usually work on the computer as well. I recommend a controller with paddles. 2 paddles are cool, but I recommend 4, and the reason is because you can literally move 4 buttons to a faster response trigger. And then if you do that, and your 2 buttons that you move are different than what your right triggers are, you can really have an insane setup. Now, I don't do that because I don't play claw style, so it would kind of be like hurting my gameplay a little bit. But I have run into like basically a plateau, although one of my paddles is currently broken. But I've basically plateaued on my building and editing just because of my button layout that I have set up right now. And none of my edit buttons are actually on my paddles, so I'm thinking about changing that, just because right now I have like a double joystick kind of weird configuration going on, and it actually slows down my edits quite a bit because I can notice it. So yeah, that's there. So honestly, if you're on console, or if you play controller on console, the very first thing I recommend you do is obviously do your aim training, figure out your aim sensitivity settings, but then get a paddled controller. Now there's various different types of ones. I recommend doing what's ever the most affordable for you, honestly. So like, because I was thinking about getting an Elite controller, but then I seen the Fusion Pro A controller, and the cost is like literally a third. You can get it with a warranty from Amazon. It comes with a 1 year or like a 2-year warranty, something like that. There's a lot going on COVID wise right now, but the company seems really responsive. They're trying to get me my parts. They just kind of have some backlog issues right now, but overall, you can do that. They have packs that actually slide onto the back of your controllers that add 2 or 4 paddles. Now, are there downsides and upsides to all these? Yes. Now, does every game support the paddles? No. At least not the super customizable way. A lot of these become reprogrammable on the controller, but not via software. Now, there's a Razer controller that's really nice, and I think that one's customizable by software. But I could be wrong, but some of those don't always work across devices, so I wanted something that I could like rotate from my Xbox to my not PlayStation, but Xbox to my computer, and back and forth, just because it's really needed, at least for my situation. So that's what I recommend. Go over your settings and just fine tune where you're at right now, and don't change it every single game, because if you change it every single game, making little bitty tweaks, you're never going to really know what's good. It would be like if every day you went out and tweaked your brakes a little bit. Like obviously if you run tests and you're on a dynamo and all that, yeah, you're tweaking it for helpfulness. But if you go into a game and you're like, man, my aim was off, I'm going to turn this all the way up or turn this all the way down, that's not fine tuning. That's just making adjustments without any input data. Now if you're in the training maps and you're shooting and you're finding that, hey, you're missing your targets, your aim's really off, or like you can't track with certain things, you may have to find a middle ground. And sniping is going to be different than your pistol, so you have to find a middle ground that works for everything across the board. And what I found out is if I turn up my multiplier for my spin sensitivity, what happens is, well, my flick shots go off the chart and I can hit them like non-stop. But then I also found out my SMG at like 75 meters I can't really hit anymore. I like being able to hit a 75 meter SMG shot. Is that aim assist? I don't know. I was doing it whenever I played keyboard and mouse too. I just didn't like keyboard and mouse. Never really played keyboard and mouse myself. So at the end of it, just practice your settings. Once you find them, play with them for a while, maybe even a week or 2 weeks, and then if they're just not, if you're just not feeling it, then start adjusting things, but don't adjust them every single day. So the next section we're going to go into is talking about our consoles. So I'm sure you've heard the theory that it's better to play on a computer. Maybe. What about the pros that play on console? What's up with that? Well, let me break this down for you. So, the Switch, well, it may be rated for 60 FPS. I can tell you from personal experience, in a game, you're lucky if you're hitting 20, 25. Sometimes it will hit 30 and stay at 30, but not very long. So what does this mean? Well, you have less response time to enemies, explosions, game interactions,
etc. People will pop around a corner and see you before you ever see them. See where I'm going with this? Yeah, so honestly, if you want to get better and you play on a Switch and that's your only platform, I hate to say it, but you would be better off playing on an iPad than you will the Switch. The iPad gets like 120 FPS, and I think they support 144 Hertz. It could be wrong on the Hertz, but they definitely support, you know, some of the newer iPads, they support 120 FPS. Newer phones, they support 120 FPS. So like phones, those are both blowing the Switch out of the water. So the Switch, in my opinion, and from my experience, because I've played on almost every console type that you can play Fortnite on, it's the worst. By far the worst. So, we'll go to the next. Phone. Is a phone better? Well, I've seen an iPhone, I think a 5S, 5C, 6C, something like that. I think it's a 5C. But I've seen the iPhones hit the 60 FPS and stay there and stay in the 40s. So, what I'm saying is, probably most phones, especially if they're Apple products, because Apple has a very optimized layout of their architecture, so Fortnite has to be very optimized to run on those devices. You're going to be better off playing Fortnite on that than you are your Switch. Now, let's compare that to a PlayStation and an Xbox One. Now, I know on Xbox One, everything's capped out at like 60 FPS. You can push it up to like 61 or 62. I've done it. Yeah, I had to delete everything off the Xbox except Fortnite. And let me tell you, it's just not worth it. It's really not. Did Fortnite run actually smoother? Yeah, it ran a little bit smoother. Would it run smoother if I put it on SSD? Yeah, probably a little bit. But would it be noticeable to actually be worth it? In my opinion, no. If you're playing on console like an Xbox One or a PlayStation 4, that's probably not going to be your limiting factor. At that point, it's probably going to be your internet. And that's the big thing that I see, is a lot of people will still play on consoles, but they'll have red, yellow X's at the top, disconnect things, and even though they're playing, they think everything's fine. But if I watch their gameplay compared to being on like 19 ping or 24 ping, I see a huge difference right away. I'm like, wow, like you're skipping, you know, it feels like you're skipping frames, but you're not. When you're used to it, like you see the difference. So I would say the biggest disadvantage on Xbox is that no matter how close the server is, I've always seen them hit 60 ping. Does it drop sometimes momentarily? Yeah. Especially depending where you live, because I know I have friends that play on Xbox and their ping is like low 20s. I can set my Xbox up at the same time as my computer, essentially, you know, without logged into the same accounts, and my computer will get 22, 24 ping, and my Xbox will have 60 ping across the board every single time. So, you know, at that point, that's when that starts coming into play. And we're just talking about consoles. We're not talking about what monitors or peripherals you have plugged in, because on a phone, you can plug a keyboard and mouse in. iPads, you know, everything. So it's kind of open with that. But you do start getting input delay on certain devices. Then, you know, you go over to whether you play on a gaming monitor or a TV. And for the most part, yes, there is a difference. For the most part, does it matter? No, not really. It starts to matter at a certain point, but for most general people improving their gameplay, if you do all the other things listed in the video, it's not really going to matter. I've played with plenty of people that play on regular TVs. You know, I played on a regular TV for a while, and honestly, it doesn't matter that much. The only thing a smaller TV really helps with, and it's a secret, I'm sure other people have talked about it, but it just helps you find llamas, because essentially you have less screen real estate if you have a smaller TV to look at, so you can pick out things on the map easier. That's it. So that and some refresh rate things. Now, Fortnite recently did It was a few updates ago, but they put out a thing that basically neutralized like 244 hertz and stuff like that to make them operate at like 60 hertz. So it's like a false lag kind of thing. So it tried to even the playing field between people, but the reality of it is it doesn't do it. And the reason why is because you're still getting higher FPS. You're still getting better input. You still get better reaction time. You may, there is like this weird lag thing that happens that they're trying to weed out, but overall, PC is going to be the best option to play Fortnite on, but it's not a necessity. If you have a console already that's like PlayStation or Xbox, you're fine. Play it, go through your settings, adjust the settings, keep an eye on your internet, and just, start going through these tips to really hone in on your game. Now, if there's any other tips that you want, things that I left out, things you thought should be mentioned that weren't, feel free to leave them in the comments. If there's anything you think like, oh wow, that's a great idea, let me know, because I really appreciate it, because it feels really weird for me to just jump into a game that was like already, I think 10 seasons in, and then just kind of like start getting the hang of it really quick. So, anything I can do to help. I'm not the greatest player, but I'm not like terribly awful now. I have my awful days. Everybody does. But for the most part, I'm just trying to share what I did to get a little bit better at the game. Thank you guys for watching. If you want, go check out my Twitch channel. Go check out my TikTok. Really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Law 29. Plan all the way to the end. Law 17. Cultivate an air of unpredictability. Law 15. Crush your enemy totally. Do not give them the chance to rebuild their forces. Law number 8. Make other people come to you. Use bait if necessary. Law number 7. Get others to do the work for you. Law number 3. Conceal your intentions.